Hello class! Today we are moving into lesson 3 in our plant unit. We're going to talk about pollination and fertilization. Make sure to open up your notes to lesson 3. Here are our goals for lesson 3. First, you will learn to describe why pollination is important. Then, you will learn about and be able to describe how pollination happens, the process of pollination. After that, you will be able to label the process of pollination on a diagram. Last, you will list some ways that flowers are pollinated. So let's start to talk about pollination. Pollination is very important. It leads to the creation of new seeds that grow into new plants. So that's something important to put in your notes. Pollination is important because it leads to the creation of new seeds, and those new seeds grow into new plants. But where in a plant does pollination begin? The flower! So let's start to talk about how pollination happens. As you learned in the last lesson, flowering plants have several parts. Flowers have stamens that produce a sticky powder called pollen. Flowers also have a pistil where seeds are made. The pistil has a sticky top called a stigma. Pause here and write some of these down in your notes. Now that we know where pollination occurs, let's talk more specifically about the steps of pollination. So step 1. To be pollinated, pollen must be moved from a stamen to the top of the pistil, which is called the stigma. The stigma is sticky, so the pollen sticks to it. So let's look at this in our picture. First, pollen starts in the stamen, and then it must move to the top of the pistil, which is called the stigma. Stigma is sticky, so the pollen is able to stick. Let's look at step 2. Next, the pollen then travels down a small opening at the top of the pistil until it reaches the base of the pistil. So that's what you see in step 2 here. It moves from the stigma all the way down the pistil. At the base of the pistil is the ovule containing the plant's egg. When the pollen mixes with the egg, seeds are formed. So go ahead and write these steps down in your notes and make sure to label the diagram too. Let's talk about different types of pollination. First, let's talk about self-pollination. Self-pollination is when pollen from a plant's stamens mixes with the egg of that same plant and produces seeds. This is known as self-pollination, so it's all occurring within the same flower. A different type of pollination is cross-pollination. This occurs when pollen from a plant's stamens travel to another plant's pistil and mixes with that plant's egg to produce seeds. This is known as cross-pollination. The plants must be the same type of plant for this to occur. So in self-pollination, you can see in the picture there's only one flower. In cross-pollination, two flowers from the same type of plant pollinate each other. Now let's talk about how pollen moves. Look at the images below and you'll be able to see some very common types of pollinators. What do you notice in the picture? Some pollination occurs by birds and insects. When flowers are pollinated by birds and insects, it's accidental. They don't stop by purposefully to pollinate that plant. Usually, they are at the plant to get food, the sticky pollen or sweet nectar made at the base of the petals. When feeding, they rub against the flower's stamens, causing pollen to stick to their bodies. When they move to another flower to feed, some of that pollen can get stuck to the plant's stigma and then make its way down the pistil to the ovule. So in your notes, try to summarize what you learned on this slide. Pause for a minute and write down why pollination by birds, butterflies, and hummingbirds can be accidental. Have you ever wondered why certain plants are just so vibrantly colored? Why some of them smell so great? The reason why is that these plants are pollinated by birds and insects, and they rely on their bright color and strong smell to attract the pollinators. This is the answer to number 8 in your notes. So we just learned that some plants are pollinated by bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, and other types of insects. Another way that pollination can occur is by wind. Wind can also be responsible for pollinating plants. The wind picks up the pollen from one plant and blows it onto another. Plants that are pollinated by wind often have long stamens and pistils to catch the pollen. Since they don't need to attract insects and birds, they can be dully colored, unscented, or have strong smell, or have small petals. So, in your notes for question 9, write what characteristics plants that are pollinated by wind must have. That's all for our lesson today. Thank you for joining us.